Long ago, in the heart of the Yoruba forests, there stood a prosperous kingdom called Areoi. It was a land of drummers and diviners, of traders and farmers, of oracles and warriors. The people were happy and hard-working, their laughter echoing through the market square like talking drums on market days. At the center of Areoi was the palace, a magnificent compound with carved wooden pillars, bronze statues, and a tall shrine for the gods of the land. And ruling this beautiful kingdom was King Adetin, a tall man with glowing skin like polished mahogany, eyes sharp like a hawk's, and a voice that thundered louder than the talking drum. But he had one weakness: greed. King Adetin was not always greedy. When he first ascended the throne, he was loved. He gave yam festivals, fed the poor, and listened to the Babalawos. But as his power grew, so did his appetite for wealth, for land, and for praise. He taxed his people more and more. A basket of fish? 10 cowries for the palace. A harvest of maize? The king wanted 1/3. He took gold ornaments from brides and demanded tribute from children yet unborn. His palace treasury grew so full that goats could no longer find space to sleep in the courtyard. Yet he wanted more. A king must own everything in his land, he declared. One Harmattan morning, the chief priest of Orunmila, a gaunt man in white robes with face marked by sacred chalk, entered the king's court uninvited. "Kabisi, oh," he said, bowing thrice, "what brings you here without my summon?" King Adetin asked, frowning. Orunmilia's priest raised his beaded staff and chanted, "The drum warns before thunder, the snail retreats before the storm. A heart that hungers too much will eat what turns to stone." He warned the king to offer sacrifice to the divine messenger and to change his greedy ways. But the king laughed, tossing cowries at the priest's feet. "You think I fear stone? I fear nothing." The priest gathered his chalk and staff and left without a word. That night, as the wind howled through the palace courtyards, a stranger appeared at the palace gate. He was dressed in dusty rags, but had the bearing of a noble. His walking stick was carved like a serpent, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "I bring a gift for the king," he said. The guards hesitated, but fear prickled their backs. They let him in. Before the king, the man knelt and opened a small wooden box. Inside was a shining, sculpted figurine, a statue of a man in regal robes, holding a staff, his face proud and arrogant. "Who is this?" the king asked. "It is you," the stranger whispered. "A gift, but beware, it reflects your true spirit." Foolish with pride, the king snatched it and placed it on the royal stool beside his throne. From that night, strange things began to happen. Whenever the king sat on his throne, he felt a strange stiffness in his limbs. He grew colder, even when the sun blazed. His voice began to crack like dry calabash. The court servants whispered. The palace dogs howled when they saw him. One day, as he reached for his evening meal, his fingers locked around the goblet and could not unclench. His royal handmaiden screamed. His skin began to harden. First his hands, then his arms, then his feet. The Babalawos were summoned, but their divination showed the same thing. The heart of stone becomes stone. The greedy king shall no longer move. One market day, while addressing his subjects, King Adetin raised his arm and froze. Mid-speech, his face locked in pride, he turned to stone. Before the gasping crowd, the once mighty king became a perfect statue. His skin was now smooth granite, his crown fixed forever to his head, his eyes forever looking down on the people he once exploited. No one dared touch him. The palace priests declared, "Let him remain here as a lesson. He shall sit on the throne he craved forever." And so a new king was chosen, King Omateo, a humble prince raised by farmers, who swore never to walk the path of Adetin. Even now, it is said, when the moon is full and the wind carries the smell of roasted yam and palm oil from the market, the statue of King Adetin sheds a single tear. Old women tell children not to be greedy, pointing to the silent Stone King. Fathers remind sons, mothers warn daughters. Ranti omo me, they say. Remember, child, greed can turn a man into stone. In the village square, the elders carved the tale into drums and calabashes. Griots sang it on moonlit nights. The statue still sits on the old throne, surrounded by growing moss and silence. Children avoid the palace steps. Only the birds perch on his crown now, and the wind whispers through the carved rafters. A king who takes all ends up with nothing but silence. Years passed, and the tale of the greedy king faded from the lips of some, but not for Eomide, a curious 12-year-old girl with eyes like morning dew and hair always wrapped in her mother's old scarf. She lived with her grandmother in the outer compound of Areoi, where stories still held power like palm oil holds flavor. One afternoon, while fetching firewood near the palace, Eomide wandered too close to the royal courtyard. The guards had long since grown lax. Many believed the Stone King's curse no longer mattered. Children dared each other to peek at him through cracks in the wooden gate. Eomide slipped in. The air grew cold. There sat the statue of King Adetin, exactly as the story said, eyes staring, hand raised, mouth half open in an eternal royal command. She stepped closer. The birds flew off. The air became still. She reached out, not to touch, but to see if the stone truly breathed as the tales claimed. As her fingers hovered near the king's stone robe, a gust of wind slammed the palace door shut. Eomide gasped. Then she heard it, a whisper, soft like a dry leaf brushing across the courtyard. Omo me, save me. She froze. The statue's face seemed to change ever so slightly. The proud lips quivered. A tear shimmered down the stone cheek and splashed onto the cracked marble floor. Eomide bolted from the palace. That night, she told her grandmother what she had seen. But the old woman said only one thing. Stone remembers, and stone punishes, but sometimes stone pleads. That year, for the first time in many generations, the people of Areoi held a long-forgotten celebration. Ayerpa, the festival of forgiveness. Drummers gathered. Dancers wore white wrappers. Palm oil lamps lined the streets. The new king, Omateo, had declared that the sins of old must be acknowledged for peace to reign. Babalawos were summoned to perform a cleansing ritual. Offerings were placed at the feet of King Adetin's statue. Roasted yams, kola nuts, and 7 red-feathered cocks. The air crackled, the ground trembled, and before the watching eyes of the entire kingdom, the statue groaned. A deep, echoing sound like thunder through iron. But it did not move. Days after the festival, Eomide had a dream, clear as a river. A voice whispered, "Under the throne lies my shame. Set it free." She told King Omateo, who listened. Unlike Adetin, he valued even the youngest voice. He summoned his guards and Babalawos to examine the statue's platform. After digging beneath the throne, they discovered a hidden chamber, filled with chests of stolen goods. Farmers' yams, gold from widows, ornaments taken from newlyweds, and ancient sacred items once meant for the gods. Everyone gasped. Elders shook their heads. Priests cried out. "This," said the oldest Babalawo, "is the weight that turned flesh to stone." King Omateo ordered the items returned. Whatever could not be traced was burned in a sacred, cleansing fire at the riverbank. The people watched the flames rise high into the night sky, sparks floating like spirits released from bondage. As the last of the cursed treasures turned to ash, thunder rolled through the sky without clouds. A single lightning bolt cracked the earth not far from the palace, and in the courtyard, the statue of King Adetin crumbled. It did not break with noise or violence. It dissolved softly, slowly, into dust carried off by the wind. All that remained was the royal crown, now dulled by time, and a piece of cloth with the royal crest charred around the edges. Where the statue once sat the next morning, a message was found burned into the stone base, not carved, not written, but scorched as if by fire itself. It read, "Let he who rules not forget that kings are servants in gold. Greed makes stone of flesh, but humility gives breath to the land." From that day, King Omateo placed a clay pot filled with water at the base of the throne, to remind all rulers that power should quench thirst, not burn tongues. Aomide was made keeper of the tale, and the kingdom flourished like never before. But every new king, every single one, was required to sit before the empty throne for one night alone, to remember the man who once sat too proudly. Many seasons passed. The land of Areoi thrived under King Omateo's wise rule. His beard grew white, his voice gentler with age, and his footsteps slower. Knowing the time of his departure neared, he called forth his only son, Prince Doroten, a handsome youth with eyes like storm clouds and a tongue sweet as honey. But those who looked closely saw it, the restlessness in his gaze, the hunger behind his smiles. He wore embroidered wrappers woven in gold, and rode a black stallion no one else dared to mount. Though he bowed before elders, he often muttered under his breath. He hated the silent throne with the water pot beneath it. "Why honor failure?" he once asked. "A king must be feared, not wept over." The elders frowned. The drummers grew quiet, but the old king only sighed. "Power," Omateo told him, "is not a crown on the head. It is a burden carried in the heart." But Prince Doroten did not listen. When King Omateo died, drums beat for 7 days. Women wailed. Masquerades danced through the streets. And at last it was time for the sacred vigil, the night when the new king must sit before the empty throne, alone until dawn. It was tradition, but Doroten, proud and defiant, whispered to his guards, "I will not sit in the cold for a foolish old tale. The throne is mine. The people are mine. The palace is mine." That night he did not sit. He held a feast instead. He drank palm wine from golden cups, danced with praise singers, and laughed until the moon hid behind clouds. And far away in the palace courtyard, the water in the clay pot froze, though the night was warm. Doroten was crowned king the next morning. He promised glory, trade, and power, but strange things began to happen. The talking drums stopped answering his summons. Yam tubers came out hollow in the harvest. The royal rooster crowed at midnight instead of dawn. Children refused to play near the palace gates. "The shadows are watching," they said. The pot beneath the empty throne remained untouched, but the water inside turned black. And when Doroten tried to sit on the sacred stool, the stool of kings past, he felt a sudden cold beneath his skin, as if someone had touched his spine with an icy finger. One night, the king sat alone in the palace court, staring at the stars. All was silent, save the hiss of wind through dry leaves. Then a voice came, deep and cracked like breaking stone. "Another has forgotten. Another must remember." King Doroten leapt to his feet. "Who's there?" he shouted. The shadows moved. The stars blinked out. And in the corner of the courtyard, just behind the old throne, a shape began to form. Stone gathering dust, dust taking form, and before his eyes a hand, gray and cracked, gripped the side of the throne. The figure of King Adetin began to rise once more. Drummers were summoned. Priests ran through the night. The palace shook with chants. Babalawos cast cowries on woven mats, and the message was clear. The greedy spirit was never gone, only sleeping. Disrespect has stirred him awake. The elders cried out for mercy. Aomide, now an old woman, hobbled back into the palace on her staff. She touched the cold throne with trembling fingers and whispered prayers. But the statue was rising again, stone-formed eyes that wept black tears. A voice echoed from the stone mouth. "A king who does not listen will become a silence no one forgets." The ground split beneath Doroten's feet. Screaming, he stumbled backwards as the throne blazed with light. The clay pot shattered. Wind tore through the palace like a lion enraged. And then, silence. When dawn broke, the people gathered before the palace. There sat the throne, but no Doroten. Only a new statue, hands clenched, mouth open in denial, pride frozen into its face. Another warning, another tale. From that day, the throne was no longer passed down by birthright. The people chose their rulers through wisdom, sacrifice, and humility. Every new leader had to walk barefoot through the 7 farms, carry water from the oldest widow's well, and kneel before Aomaida's grave. The throne remained in the palace courtyard, empty, waiting, watching, and the wind whispered, always, "Not all who wear the crown are worthy, but all who forget shall return to stone." Far beyond the hills of Araoi, past the river run and the whispering forest of Ogun's shrine, there sat a quiet farming village named Idara. The people there were simple, their songs sweet, their yam barns full. But they were not blind. Every market day, traveling traders returned from Araoi with wide eyes and stories that made the firewood crack louder in the night. "They say the statue speaks again," murmured one. "They say the new king turned to stone in one breath," whispered another. The elders of Idara, bent with age, but sharp as the new moon, gathered at the foot of the Irako tree. They lit lamps, poured libation, and spoke in low voices. One elder, Baba Endi, stroked his white beard and said, "Araoi has fallen to forgetting. But if even one heart remembers, the curse will not cross the hills." Among the people of Idra was a boy named Kuhind, barely 10, with bright, curious eyes and ears that listened more than they spoke. His mother was a weaver, his father a palm tapper, but his heart was full of stories. One evening, he overheard a trader from Araoi say, "Even the wind is afraid to blow near the old throne now." That night, Kuhind dreamt of a crown made of bones, a voice crying from stone, and a village drowning in golden ash. He woke sweating, his heart pounding like drums before a storm. The next day he ran to Baba Endi and said, "If the curse walks, can it come to us?" The elder looked deep into the boy's eyes and nodded slowly. "If we grow proud, if we forget to honor the earth, to respect the hungry, to pour water for the spirits, yes, child, it can." The elders of Idara summoned the Babalowo, a quiet man named Ifigbemi, who spoke only when the gods moved his lips. He spread his palm nuts on the divination mat, sang ancient praises, and fell into a trance. When his eyes opened, he spoke. "A shadow rides on stone feet. It will cross rivers, it will not rest. Only truth in the mouths of children can turn it back." The villagers trembled. What shadow? What feet? Why children? But Baba Endi placed his hand on Kuhinda's shoulder and said, "The gods always choose the least expected." From that day, Kuhind began to learn. He learned the old chants, how to greet the trees, how to speak with the ancestors, and he dreamed every night of the statue walking. One Harmattan morning, a strange thing happened. A single footprint, large and deep like a pestle strike, appeared beside the riverbank. No one had crossed that way. The next day there were 2. By the third, a trail of stone footprints stretched from the river to the edge of the market square. Fear swept through Idra. Children were kept inside. Drums were silenced. Even the masquerades refused to dance. And at the center of the square, someone placed an offering, a gourd of palm wine and a single kola nut, beside the last footprint. It vanished by morning. Kuhind stood alone beneath the great Irako tree at dawn. He raised his hands and whispered, "If you are listening, I am not afraid." The wind stopped. The birds fled. And from the roots of the tree came a low voice. "Do you know what it is to be forgotten? To be turned into a warning and nothing more?" A crack appeared in the trunk of the Irako. Sap oozed from the wound like blood. Kuhind knelt. "I do not know," he whispered, "but I will remember." And the tree whispered back, "Then remember well, for a throne is coming." Kuhind awoke before the cock crowed, but something was wrong. The The sky above Idra remained the color of bruised ash. The sun had not risen. Women clutched their children. Farmers who tried to enter their fields found the yams shriveled overnight. Birds sat silently in the trees, eyes wide as though they too had heard the whisper of doom. At the village square, the elders assembled in haste. Baba Endi leaned on his carved staff and muttered, "The shadow draws closer. It walks by night and now dares the day." And just then, from the forest path came a deep grinding sound, like rock dragging against rock. Footsteps, heavy, final. Kuhind, standing beneath the cloth-wrapped shrine of his ancestors, felt a cold wind pass through his bones. He looked toward the edge of the village and saw it, a figure of stone, not like the tales, taller, broader, angry. It had no face, only hollow sockets that glowed faintly like coal. Cracks ran down its chest like lightning frozen in stone. Its arms were bound in rusted gold chains. All the villagers fled, but Kuhind stood. "Are you?" "Adetin," he called. The statue did not answer, but its head turned slowly toward the boy. In that silence, Kuhind heard hundreds of voices weeping, whispering, groaning, all inside the statue's chest. He fell to his knees. That night, Baba Endi came to Kuhind with a bundle of cowries, a charcoal gourd, and a white cloth. "You must go to the river shrine of Un," he said, "before the next moon. You must ask the river how to break a curse carved into stone." Kuhind swallowed hard. "Will the river answer?" The old man smiled. "Only if your heart is cleaner than your words." By morning, Kuhind had set off barefoot, carrying only a staff, a calabash of spring water, and the hopes of Idra. Behind him, the stone figure stood unmoving. But every time he looked back, it seemed closer. Kuhind reached the ancient bridge that led to the river shrine. But to cross, he had to face the bridge keeper, a masked spirit with teeth like oyster shells and a laugh like broken pots. "You wish to break stone?" the spirit asked. Kuhind nodded. "Then offer me what weighs you most." Kuhind thought deeply. He removed the cloth wrap his mother gave him, the last piece of home he carried. He laid it on the bridge. The wind lifted it, and the spirit vanished. Kuhind crossed. But behind him, on the dusty trail, he saw new prints forming. Stone footprints, still following. At last, Kuhind knelt before the river shrine of Un. The waters shimmered gold in the moonlight, but the river did not speak at once. He poured the spring water into the current, bowed his head, and whispered, "I don't ask to stop the statue, only to understand it." The river rose, curling like a serpent, and formed the face of a woman. On herself, radiant and sorrowful. Her voice was like many bells. Stone remembers what flesh forgets. The statue walks not to destroy, but to remind. She raised her hand and showed Kuhind a vision. Adetin, young and kind, giving food to the hungry. But as the crown grew heavier on his head, so did his greed. And the gods, betrayed, gave him eternity as punishment. But, unsaid, if truth is spoken where pride once ruled, the stone will sleep again. Kuhind returned to Idra with dust on his feet, leaves in his hair, and the scent of river blessing clinging to his skin. The sky had still not brightened. It remained caught in an endless twilight. The statue now stood inside the village square. Cracks in the ground led to it like roots. It had not moved in hours, but everyone could feel it, watching, listening, waiting. Drums refused to sound. The goats bleated and ran into the forest. Babies wailed for no reason. But when Kuhind stepped into the square, the wind shifted. The clouds parted slightly. The elders peered from doorways. Mothers clutched their beads. The boy carried no weapon, only a small calabash filled with river water and a small mirror wrapped in white cloth. Kuhind approached the statue. It was taller now, more ancient. Its body seemed to pulse faintly as though alive. He stood before it and unwrapped the mirror. Holding it up, he spoke. You are not evil. You are a warning. But even a warning can become a curse if no one remembers the reason behind it. The mirror reflected not just the statue, but a young man's face flickering inside it. Proud, beautiful, regal. It was Adeton before greed changed him. Cuhind poured the river water at the statue's feet and whispered, "Un says you walk not to destroy, but to remind. So now I speak what your people forgot." He turned and faced the crowd that had gathered, and with a voice far stronger than any 10-year-old's, Cuhind cried, "Let us remember the hungry who go unnoticed. Let us honor those who warn us, even when we ignore them. Let us never again choose kings by riches, but by kindness." Silence followed, and then a single drop fell from the statue's hollow eye. Not black, not ash, but clear like a tear of rain. The stone cracked, not in violence, but in release. Golden light poured from the breaks, lighting up the square like dawn. The ground trembled once, twice, and then stilled. The statue's arms fell gently to its sides. Its chest caved in slowly, revealing a carved heart of clay, which crumbled into dust. Then the statue crumbled, piece by piece, like dried earth returning to the soil. The curse was lifted, and for the first time in weeks the sun rose. The people gathered in the square, many with tears in their eyes. Baba Endi removed his cap and bowed deeply to Cuhind. Others followed, warriors, traders, mothers, drummers. "Cuhind," Baba said, "you have taught us again what elders forgot. You will not sit on a throne of gold, but on one of remembrance." A stool was carved from the wood of the Iroko tree, not to rule but to guide, and every week people from distant villages came to hear Cuhind speak, not with power but with truth. He became known across Yorubaland as Akambi Ifo-Aroya, the boy who faced stone, and the broken pieces of the statue were buried beneath the town square, with an inscription carved in iron. Pride built this form. Truth set it free. May we never forget again. Years passed. Children were born. Idra became a place of wisdom pilgrims, where leaders came not to command but to listen. Cuhind grew older. He refused riches, refused titles, but sometimes on quiet evenings he would sit near the buried statue and place his hand to the ground. And every once in a while, when the wind blew just right, he would hear it again. "Not all who wear the crown are worthy, but all who forget shall return to stone." He would nod and whisper back, "We remember."